one other thing we need to talk about, which is in terms of things not looking quite as good as you might have hoped at the international tournament, right? We actually have a problem that has only just reared its head right now in League of Legends, Yamato, but it's actually a semi-common thing in Counter-Strike if anyone follows it, which is in Counter-Strike, one of the problems with the game is Counter-Strike, especially by the way, even more than League, needs like a HUD that is really good, like a good UI that you can see very quick. Like the famous one is recently ESL changed theirs. ESL had a really iconic one in Counter-Strike that if you've seen, it's like the best thing about it was always very, very uniform. And so the second your brain, if you're a Counter-Strike fan, would watch the screen, it's like a real HUD. If you were in like a mech suit, your brain knows like sort of where to quickly look with your eye. And so you wouldn't even have to think about like how much health does he have, what weapons there. Your brain would just quickly see it in your peripheral vision as you're watching. And it's like you wouldn't have to stop paying attention. Right? In League, it's almost never changed. It's actually been a very, very simple overlay for most of the history of League of Legends. They haven't really tried to get fancy. Now, the reason in Counter-Strike why they've changed the HUD and the UI many times is one, you sometimes do it for style reasons. You're trying to show you're different to a competitor because in Counter-Strike, we have different tournament operators. It's not just Riot Games, as it were, here. And then secondly, sometimes you're also trying to actually like level up the process I just said. Like you're trying to make a HUD that has like more intuitive like way of showing. For example, in Counter-Strike, some of the things that are hard to show initially is things like the sidearm, like what pistol do they have, or like do they have a kit? Is that like bold enough? Did I make that like off to the side? Is it blocking some information on the screen? There's another thing you don't want to. In Counter-Strike, you're going to put it on the sides of the screen, so you don't want it too much over. By the way, they have the same problem in League. Sometimes in League, the reason why you can't see what the score is they turn that scoreboard off when they're having the fight in the Nexus, don't they? So that nothing gets covered on the bottom of the screen. A guy can't do a flank there and you miss it because of the scoreboard. So when they did this UI change, what did you think? Because I noticed everyone's initial reaction, it's nearly always the case anyway. It's because you're not used to seeing it. You just think this fucking sucks. Why have you But I want to know, now you've seen it for a few days, what do you think of the HUD change overall? Like, is there like a logic to some of it? Do you think it's worse? What's your overall take at the moment?
Like in my mind, like I think the key idea that you don't want to show the champion portraits twice. I think trying to experiment ways to only show the champion portraits once makes sense, because that does take like screen real estate.
Yeah, that's true.
That is like important. And at the same time, what League players are like used to is that when you click somebody in game, you see their stats in the top left corner. That is usually the corner where the least interesting thing is occurring. So they wanted to move that. The change in the first place, like obviously, it's like we've watched League for fucking forever, so it's a fucking. It's like a fucking smack in the face when it changed. But I do think in the beginning, like the adjustments they did in between the days was a massive massive game changer. I don't know. It's borderline. It was so bad in the beginning that I always think that Riot started it off really, really bad so they could look like heroes. And then the adjustment, it's like the adjustment period. That is my conspiracy. That the adjustments they made are so well welcomed that, you know, the pain from the first day feels lessened. Because if they started where they were today, I think people wouldn't have as positive of a reaction to it on, of course, day 3. So I wonder if Riot did that intentionally, because what was so weird in the beginning was that the bar, due to the champion icons being a little bit too big, it wasn't uniform with the information. Like the boxes weren't the same size as the text and where the HP was and so forth, that the box was a little bit too big. So when they were showing like stats or they have like MasterCard gold graphs or whatever, it just looked like it was out of place because it was just this black bar that just wasn't, you know, like my OCD was just like fucking going crazy because I'm just seeing that bar. I was like, whoa, but this is just not in the center. It's driving me insane. Today, they did change, they changed the size of that bar. They made it smaller. The icons are smaller and the XP is there. I think these changes are really, really good. The final thing that I would want is that in the top corner, I think in terms of how they present the data there, I think the colors are a little bit fucking, it is just too glaring to me. And at the same time, I would say that like showing a screen with like, oh, the 1-0 Rift Herald, 1-0 Atakan, I think that's completely pointless. And I think that showing feat of strength, I think that's something that they should do more active if, of course, the casters are talking about it. It's like, oh, the feat of strength right now, they're playing for this. Because it's such an insignificant point in the game that it feels just shoehorned in. Like that rotating thing they have in the top left, I'm just sitting there and waiting for the Drake count. I don't think that makes sense. Like Drake count is the most important thing, and then grub count matters too, but you can put the grub count on that Drake counter, and then there you go. Don't rotate it. I don't need to see feat of strength. I don't need to see which team took Herald. It only really matters if they have it in their inventory and they use it, because past that point, I'm not sitting 28 minutes into the game. It's like, oh, which team took Rift Herald? No, who fucking cares? So I think as long as they fix that rotating thing, I think this UI, I think it comes from a good place. Because I do think when they switched the view, where they removed the bottom bar and the HP and everything is on left and right, I think that was super, super clean from day one. What was your impression, Thorin? What did you think? Did you have to fight back?
I thought it looked way worse,
was...
mate. I thought it did look way worse. Not just because of the initial effect that like your eye doesn't know where to look or what you're looking at, and you sort of like having to sort of manually do it before you get used to like robotically just knowing, like I say, with your peripheral vision. But I also did think that the information was less clear. Like I actually was really confused as to what they thought the aim was. Like I'll give you an example. If someone goes on LS's Twitter, the Korean one had a way better one. Their like health bar had the little lines. You know the classic thing in League where the problem is a health bar doesn't get larger because it'd get ludicrous for like a fucking Cho'Gath or something. What happens is you make those little lines to show that this bar just contains more health because the lines become closer together. They already had that on the Korean one, believe it or not. So their health bars already made way more sense and was more intuitive. They looked almost like a fighting game health bar, if someone knows the analogy. So I do think stuff like that is what you need to level up. The problem is, this is what I don't get, is I don't know why you debut something like that on like an international tournament. Like test that out regionally, you know what I mean? Go through like, make this like a regular season thing where you fuck around with these things. Like if you want, then try one thing one week, try one thing another. It's not the stakes aren't that high. The problem is when people are tuning in to watch, like, luckily it hasn't been the biggest matches yet, but when it's like TS versus Animal Life, like people don't want to be thinking about things like, what the fuck am I looking at? Or where's the, oh, what's that? I can't quite read it. Like that's the game where you want it all to be set. And like I say, automatically we all know how it all works and your eyes are tuned to it. Because I will give them a slight bit of leeway, which is, as I said before, I've noticed in Counter-Strike, I also by default would almost always be like, this is worse because it just was taking more time for my brain to like remap the screen, as it were, in my brain. So sometimes it can turn out like the change is better, and in the long run that information it shows is better to see than whatever it used to have. The problem is I'm skeptical about these ones though. Like I don't hate the idea of changing it, but I do think actually the old scoreboard was incredibly simplistic. It didn't really like it had a lot of useless information on there which wasn't necessary. I even think, by the way, things like even things like summoners don't have to be shown in the same way. Like we just take that for granted that like in the same way as when we play the game, it's on a scoreboard. We just feel like these things have to be on the screen. I'm with you though. I'm not against the idea of like trying to tell the story of the game in a different way. Like one thing they've done as a quick sidebar on broadcasts in the last few years that they don't quite, the problem is they don't quite commit to it, Yamato, so they don't really make it work. But I like the effort at least. Is, you know, where they'll try and show you, they show now like when he completed an item. I always thought the better approach, because I came up watching League of Legends with Monte Cristo as a commentator, and I've always said if you were an outsider from League or you didn't play the game and spam it loads, one of the best things he always did was outline win conditions for players and teams in the game. Like this comp needs to get to this point in the game with this person on 3 items, and then they're going to have like a spike when they get to this particular item where they're going to be able to take the objective. When he would do it that way, I would always think this is brilliant to watch the game, because now I actually have like a set of expectations, and he's given me like a recipe there. Like I can follow, if they follow this recipe, I can see that, like, for example, that the best games, by the way, where this would work the most effectively would be where it would be like a team was able to scale and do a comeback in the game when it looked like from the lanes they were just going to lose the lane. And if you just played solo queue and you'd think, well, this game's over, but actually this team, their whole comp was built that like they had like a Caitlyn that could just farm waves or something, you know, and get fed, and at the end of the game they could carry. So one thing I always wanted them to do on the broadcast more with the HUD is I want them to do like a predictive version of that. I want them to be like, right, in this game, Kaliste needs on it to get to this third item as ADC, which is probably going to be, and then you guess whatever it might be, Lord Dominic's Revenge or something. And when he gets to this item, like we're going to track how far he is from that item, and we're going to look in the game. This might be when they'll do a base, or this might be where they'll give up a dragon to get more. I always thought that aspect, like the reason I'm bringing this point up, Yamato, is that is not the way currently they do the UI at all. It's not even how they try to tell the story in the broadcast. But I'm giving you an example of how an alternative way where you're focusing on different things, not just uniformly looking at all 10 players, could tell the story of the game very differently, though. So it's up to, it all depends what you want the broadcast to be. Do you want the broadcast to be just a load of information, like a stock trader? And if you're an expert, you get everything. And if you're a noob, you're like, oh, it's just too much info. I guess I just watch the people hitting each other on the screen. Or do you want to like tell a certain story? Do you want to highlight certain aspects that you think are more important? I actually think a lot of the like laning stuff that's shown isn't even that relevant. Like most people, by the way, don't even know how to interpret CS differences. Like that's not actually as big as people think. You could have that, like you're saying, on a side panel that when you click that person's character, it shows their farm, and you're like, oh, he's actually keep rubbing farm. Like some stuff that we take for granted that already is on the screen isn't necessarily integral information.
It brings me back to Heroes of the Storm. I feel like Heroes of the Storm, even though like Blizzard is really, really horrible at running their esports, Heroes of the Storm, basically, I don't know if you played it, but for anyone out there that didn't play, Heroes of the Storm was so easy visually because XP was team-wide and there was no items to purchase. So there was just one thing on the scoreboard, and that was experience. Right. It's like you just saw the XP, and that was like the arms race. It's like, oh, they just reached level 17 and the enemy is stuck on 16. So it's like if you got XP and you were solo killing someone, that just benefited the whole team. So like visually it was so damn streamlined and so damn easy because there was no like additional info besides like the talent points that you would like put in when you got like key levels like 4, 7, and then 10, 14, something like this. I don't remember exactly what it was. But in regards to what they could show more, what I would want to see more like in the game, I do think there's too little emphasis on XP. I think XP is just as significant as gold. If I saw this team has 35,000 XP against 30,000 XP here, because like gold leads can be so deceptive. Because in the end, everything just matters about spent gold. I think putting more emphasis on that, this is something that showed up, I think, on the LCK broadcast. And there I do see it a couple of times. This is the spent gold. It's like the gold lead is 4K, but they didn't. This gold wasn't concentrated on the right person.
It's famous ones, right? One, as you're saying, one is like, did they even spend it? Is it just like in the bank? In which case, there's not that lead isn't an advantage yet. And then two, as you nailed it, if anyone saw those NIP playoff games, if all the fucking golds on the spot who keeps killing the fucking champion instead of letting Doinby get the kill, then yeah, that is relevant gold. Like that's not actually making Doinby get an item and kill the game. So no, I know what you mean. Like in that scenario, it'd be way better to know that like the mid laner has a mad XP advantage. That would be way more telling of what's going to happen in this game, right?
For sure. And there's definitely, I'm happy. I'm with you. I'm happy that they're trying things because I think things need to stay fresh. And this is also an avenue that has been the same for a very long time. And I also agree with the notion that maybe an international is not the best time to do so. I guess it's just the issue that every region has their own like overlay and HUD, and this is what they're playing with, and they're not like keeping it uniform, because maybe that's also something that they want to do eventually, that every region uses the same kind of UI, because I think that also makes sense as a viewer to have, you know, continuity in what you're consuming and the games and the names is being different.
Yeah. Right. Let me think. I'm trying to think there was one other thing. Oh, just for hilarity purposes, I'll bring this one thing up, actually. I don't know if you saw this, because it was on another thing that LS posted on Twitter, but it was straight fire, is when Annual Life was played, did anyone see this? Where that fan had that sign, Yamato, of like describing each of the players in Annual Life. Did you see this? I'll find it for you and link it to you really quickly.
Link it to me.
This is straight fire, mate, because it's one of those things where one of the best things about Koreans is they're really earnest and they just don't know like a lot of Western memes and degenerate shit. So they'll just like really honestly just make like a comment where they don't even think it through. So like, look at this, right? What I want you to do, bring it up on stream if you can, producer, right? So what they did is they took the concept that each of the players in Humble Life is a god, right? So what I'll do is I'll purposely set it up. So I'll read in a different order than they did. So you had the 5 positions in League. So you had Zeus, so that's the god of thunder, because, you know, like, I mean, it's not even correct, actually. Like, that would be fucking Thor, wouldn't it, you idiot? But we get it. You trying to do, like, Zeus, lightning bolts, and they thought thunder is Zeus, right? We get, that's easy to understand why they got it wrong. Just some Evangelion shit where they're taking some Western stuff and put it over the top. Then you had for Zeka, well, obviously Zeka's won those 9 game 5, so he's the god of round 5. We know they mean game 5, but we'll let them say round 5. Again, we're just being really charitable here. Then you have Viper, one of the best ADCs of all time. So god of AD carry. I'm loving that one already. That's straight fire. Yeah, he's sort of the god of AD carry. Also classic ADC player. Then you've got Delight, who's obviously a fucking demon at the Rakan. So he's the god of initiating. And then we have one left. We have Peanut, that legendary LCK player. So he's obviously the god of not. isn't he? He's the god of not. Like, listen, I see what you were going for with the other ones, but that does just make it sound like you're saying Peanut is the League of Legends Bonnie Blue. Bro, listen, please, Korean fans, look up what not means. Please don't say he's the god of not. Like, we know what you mean, but fucking hell,
There has to be something better. Like,
I know, that's so better. Come on.
Even if we just take the meaning, it's like, well, he's the god of some food item. You know?
Yeah, I know.
Like even at that level, even at that level, if we're being, taking it for what it is,
I know.
just god of nut.
Well, it's one of those ones where it's just a harmless mistake, Yamal. That's my favorite ones. And by the way, let me ask you as a sidebar. Did you ever see this? Maybe you can confirm this. Bro, people think you're memeing when you say this. It's certainly the case in China, but I even found this in Korea, bro, in Seoul. I was always shocked. You actually will, for real, sometimes when you're walking, I'll give you two examples. It's either, Yamato, first of all, if you go to restaurants, you'll just sometimes see random like gibberish English written on the walls in the same way as if I made like a restaurant in the West and I didn't know Japanese. I might put some random Japanese, kanji or whatever on the wall. And then I might later find out like, oh, this doesn't mean what I thought it said. People do that in English, first of all. So like, for example, I used to go to like a fried chicken place and it would just have almost like, it was like someone had taken poetry and put it through like a fucked up translator and just messed it all up, all the syntax. So it would say something about like I'd be in a fried chicken restaurant, and on the wall in really beautiful like calligraphy in English, it would have something written like, and there is a happy home with a lovely chicken in it. And you're like, what? Like, and they mean something like, like I don't know, fresh chicken makes like a home or something. I think they were going for some angle like that, but they've just scoffed it completely. But the worst one ever is if you sometimes would go into the equivalent of like Uniqlo or like Primark or something, like some mass retail like fast fashion, shit that's like super cheap and it's all like you would have, no joke, t-shirts that had like offensive shit in English written, but that the people buying it didn't know it was offensive. I've actually seen, I'm not joking, like a Korean grandma wearing a t-shirt that's just like, fuck you. Just said like, fuck you on it. And you're like, what? Like if you wore that, you'd be like an edgy teenager if you wore that. Like, and by the way, there's no way this grandma's like fucking like on some like aggressive shit. She's just some old grandma. She just thinks like, again, like it's just some cool foreign language. Did you ever find that? Did you ever find weird shit like that again, where like their cultures like viewing ours through a weird prism? Did you ever see that in Korea?
Definitely. Like I have more memories of it happening on my trips to Japan as well.
Oh, right.
Like, sometimes there's like these signs where they're trying to like inform tourists of what not to do, and it just turns out. And I remember like this. This one that stood out to me. I think I have a picture of it. So it's a summit. There was like signs on the bathrooms where it just said, "Please don't shit on top of toilets." I was like, what just happened here? Why is this a sign, and what are they trying to say? I'm not so sure.
Also, by the way, even though this is one of those things you're probably not supposed to talk about because everyone pretends Koreans are all perfect. Mate, I'll tell you one thing that is really jarring when you go on the subway in Korea. They actually, to this day, show those ads because, on the screens, they have all those quick ads they show of, like, like some dungeon crawl game on your mobile, some fucking whatever, like K-pop song or something. One of the ones they show religiously on the underground is an ad that basically shows a cartoon of someone, like, pinching a girl's arse and sort of telling you, like, do not do this. Like, and you're like, what? Because apparently, I guess people would just be getting on with there's a packed train and just doing some like high school shit of like squeezing fucking women's asses or something. And they had to have like an ad sort of tell it, don't do that. You're like, what the fuck? It's okay, whatever. It's just a different world, mate. It's a different world.
I wonder if anyone had the intention of doing something fucked up and then they read a sign that's like, don't do that.
Did anyone ever do that? I know.
This has changed my life.
Oh, wait. Yeah, true. That is antisocial, isn't it? Yeah, you're right. I like the way this is like Korean subway version of like lane swap thing. Like, leave the lane. This is not what you got. Leave the lane immediately. Stop touching her ass. Like, all right. Maybe that's just the way things have to be now. See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.